Hi, I'm Stargate Pioneer from Better Podcasting, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
This guy gets more airtime than the Kardashians, right?
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to the Starling Tribune. I am Neil, and my friends don't call me Stargate Pioneer. And your reporters for this 16th episode of Season 4 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
Love it. A bullet to the brain or an arrow to the heart.
And I, as I said, am Neil. And after all, I'm the only one of us who has men and guns.
Nice.
This podcast is recorded on Thursday, March 24th, 2016, live on the Blab streaming service. We are just a few guys that discuss the TV show Arrow on the CW network, and tonight we're just two guys, I guess, that are going to discuss it, along with our live Blab audience. Just remember that typically Stargate Pioneer isn't a comic expert, but he's not here. So tonight you've got Chris.
I heart comics, and going to conventions makes me heart them more.
Yes, and Neil, and it's only fitting that I am going to Emerald City Comic Con, where the theme is green. So,
nice. I've always wanted to do that one. It's just too far across the country.
if you have seen all the Funko exclusives for Emerald City Comic Con, they're all green. Green Goblins, green Cthulhu's, green everything. So
I approve.
I'm hoping there's a green arrow. Really, I am.
There's gotta be.
All right, before we get into the show for tonight, guys, spoiler warning during the podcast, we'll be talking about what happened in episode 16 of the CW television show Arrow, as well as news, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the past week that could impact future episodes. So, of course, it will contain spoilers for the current episode as well as upcoming episodes. So consider yourself warned. And all of our past shows, with the couple of exceptions, as SP would point out, can now be found in the archives on GonnaGeek.com. So, Chris, am I okay to run down the current episode?
Why don't you tell you're better at that than I am, so I'm going to let you do that this week.
As we guessed on the fly. So this week's episode is Broken Hearts, Season 4, Episode 16, air date of Wednesday, March 23rd, 2016. The director was John F. Showalter. This is his first episode directing Arrow. He has directed one episode of Legends of Tomorrow, 3 episodes of Flash, 15 of Supernatural, 1 of Supergirl, 1 of Forever, 3 of The 100, 1 of Constantine, 3 of Revolution, 1 of Alphas, 10 of The Mentalist, 1 of Sleepy Hollow, and 1 of Nikita. So
that like 5 times fast.
Yeah, he's like a directing gun for hire. The writers were Rebecca Belalto. This is her first episode of Arrow, and she's a relative newcomer to the scene. And Nolan Dunbar, also his first episode of Arrow. And I get the feeling they kind of threw these new writers to the wolves. They're like, hey, write a dramatic relationship-centric episode.
It's slightly fillery.
Yeah. Okay, guys. I don't know if that's fair. Like pairing up 2 newbies and a first-time director on the show. It's like everybody wanted to get an early Easter in or something.
Or they're like, we got bigger things to worry about with this upcoming Flash and Supergirl crossover. Let's worry about that. This is a patented conspiracy theory. I know nothing about the insight of how that works over on the Arrow writing staff.
Yeah. So, hey, Chris, Broken Hearts. You think there was a theme this week?
I think there were some, I don't know, broken hearts.
Oh, everybody is sad.
Everyone is sad because relationships, love is dead. That's what Cupid was saying, if I recall correctly.
Love is dead, and so are people who are in love. And
yeah,
honestly, she was the best part of this episode.
She was. I was so happy to see her again, but at the same time, I wish they'd done more with her than just be like, I'm going to go and break up all of these weddings and I don't know. I felt like there could have been more with her. I liked the path they'd had her on with working with Task Force X, which obviously they can't use anymore. But I would have loved to have seen something more in regards to the revenge that she was wanting for losing the Arrow and Floyd Lawton, and versus just all love is terrible. I need to destroy it all. But she is psycho, so
Yeah, and you would think she would take it out on like Argus. That
yeah,
was the
exactly.
mission Floyd got killed on, and she's not taking it out on him, and instead just random socialites.
I would figure, and Cajun Sean's kind of touched on something. He says, I was hoping to see Lila this episode. She should really be going after Lila, the happily married Lila, who is heading up Argus at this point in time. She's really mad about what happened while she was under Argus's purview.
I would totally get that. I would totally get that. But okay, she looks great as Cupid. She is great doing the stunts and the fight scenes. But again, we didn't even get a ton of fight scenes. I was trying to think what we got on the fight choreography. We got Dig and Thea versus Cupid. We got Ollie going up against Cupid a couple of times. And then we got the scrap in the tunnel in the flashbacks. And for a show that we usually spend a good portion of the lead in talking about the fights, we didn't get a ton of them.
It seemed like this was, you mentioned at the top of the show, is relationship, drama this week. I mean, this was more about the fallout of Olicity breakup and how that impacts everyone. And on a side note, the impact and the fallout of what's happening with Damien Dark, which I think is the more important thing versus what we got now.
Yeah, and not to jump ahead and talk about Damien, but I don't think he said a word in this episode, did he?
And it was awesome. Neil McDonough didn't say a word. All he did was use facial expressions and smiles and smirks and raised eyebrows, and it's totally intimidating still.
Yeah, and that weird scene right at the end where he pops the wedding band, or what I'm going to assume is a magic wedding band.
That's what I assumed too. There had to be some kind of magic associated with it, be it a weak bit of magic in comparison to the totems and things he had before. But honestly, the best part of this was the B plot this week, which was Damien Dark.
Yeah, who didn't say anything, who had no lines. Now there were some good stunts. I don't want to sell them short. So a lot of great motorcycle riding, a lot of great motorcycle stunts, jumping off the back of a moving motorcycle onto the limo. The stunt person that plays Thea on the show, or Sweetie,
that was pretty slick.
That was nicely done. And then getting knocked off the top of the limo as it drove through that building.
That looked painful.
Yeah,
I just saw that. I was like, oh, ow.
Oh, it's gonna hurt. And then, of course, Ollie, yeah, don't worry, I'm going to go after Cupid myself. And even Overwatch was like, yeah, not with your team. Well done.
I think everyone had a moment where they're going, bad idea, Ollie. Bad idea. You're reverting back to old form. Don't do it.
But you know what? You know what I said to myself after this episode? I miss the Ollie that ran around Star City shooting people in the shoulder going, you've got two shoulders.
Yeah,
I missed that guy, especially in this episode. I missed our vigilante or our hood.
The edges are much smoother now. He's not rough around the edges like he used to be. And I really do miss, I know we talked about a lot in earlier episodes, you have failed this city. I mean, it was a great line, and I miss it.
I do too. Hey, listen, let's touch on the flashbacks before we go much further. They found a skull totem. That sure looked familiar.
I'm thinking it's Damien's, or very closely related to Damien's skull totem.
It looked really. I kept going, is that the same thing? It's got pointy bits. Did Damien's have pointy bits? And I didn't go back and rewatch.
I don't know. We'll have to look at a comparison. I'm sure there's pictures online of them side by side. If they're not the same, they're probably related in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they look similar tribe. It was neat getting Baron von Reiter talking about the backstory and getting more of that character development. I didn't think it added a lot this episode because, this was the B story, I think the C story even.
It just continued moving along. It's the C story, I think, is a fair way to put it. They continued moving down the path they were on, and I'm waiting to see what it amounts to. At this point, it feels like they're stretching out the island subplot a little bit this season.
Yeah, and I was hoping for more. Like, as I think I've said in the past couple of podcasts, there are some great island storylines from the New 52 where there's the Arrow clan and there's some Arrow related magic in the heart of the island. It wasn't much of a surprise to see the totem there, but I was hoping for more.
I think we might start getting some. We're gonna have to start getting some of that. We're at what, episode 16 right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much left. You're in the back third of the season right now. It's got to start speeding up. We're gonna have to. They're finally gonna have to show us what the connection is between the island and Damien. It's gonna have to be revealed for sure now.
Definitely. But talking about Oliver, we got a lot of Oliver and Felicity this week, and not Green Arrow. But I think the focus was just to show how devastated Oliver was and how reverting back to his old ways he continually was up until the end, when I think it was too late and it didn't matter. But that was really all. It was kind of one note that we got from the writing on Oliver this week.
I think it was too late, regardless of whenever he would have said something to her at this point. I think she decided that based off of his decision making and things like that, he couldn't play a part in her life because it would just continue to hurt her and she would be the one that comes out of it damaged.
Agreed, and it was probably the right call. I mean, nothing changed. We talked about this on the last podcast before the hiatus, that Oliver wasn't ready for a relationship, and whereas we had 3 weeks in between episodes, it was supposed to be the next day in Star City, and yeah, I don't think we could have expected anything to have materially changed with Ollie just because of the whole William storyline. He's not going to grow a ton because of that. It takes a while, so she made the right call, as tough as it is. And it was a continuation of her walking away at the end of the last episode. And it, as you said, it's the fallout. It's the fallout from the decisions that he's made.
The question is, how long does it take for them to go back to a point where they can coexist in the Arrow partnership, at least? Because we saw at the end, she's basically walking away from Team Arrow for now. She can't do it. And it kind of makes sense because if you look at what the season 3 has been, they basically flirt the entire time he's working out as Green Arrow.
Yeah, no, and God, I miss those days with awkward Felicity in the cave. Ollie doing the salmon ladder. It worked, and the relationship. I don't know. Is it fair to say the relationship's gotten in the way?
I think that is a fair statement, and I think it all goes back to they never expected this to become as popular as it did. The whole Felicity thing, I don't think was ever really in the cards, and then the fans kind of took it and ran with it, and they said, okay, we're going to pull this in. And if you follow canon, Oliver and Felicity can't be together. Canon is Laurel / Dinah and Oliver, and God, I hope they don't follow that route one day. But we know that that's what canon is, and they should be going to. The question is, what do they do with Felicity in the meantime? Does she just get written back as just being one of Oliver's friends after they get over all the hurt feelings, or are they going to kill her off? We know she's not in the grave.
Unless
Yet.
he snapped and he's imagining it. But no, I agree.
That's
She's
true.
not
He doesn't touch Ghost Felicity, if that's the case, though, if I recall correctly.
There's conspiracies within conspiracies.
Ooh, my brain hurts
But
now.
no, I know. I don't think it's a ghost Felicity. You're pulling M. Night Shyamalan on this one. No. What I would like, and again, have you read the Longbow Hunters graphic novel?
I have not yet, no.
Oh, we got to get you there, because if you want to follow canon, Ollie's life falls apart in Star City, and he and Laurel just say, screw this, screw the superheroes, screw the Justice League, screw the drama, screw the trick arrows. Let's just go run a florist in Seattle, and let's just get out of Dodge. And if his relationship is devastated and Captain Lance, I'm calling it now, Captain Lance is in the grave.
I sure want us to think that.
If everything goes to poop in Star City, I could see him at the end of this season, and I know they won't do this, but walk with me. I could see them going, Laurel, let's just leave town. You screwed up this court case. Your dad's been tried or dead. Let's go away. And there we could revert back to canon in a pretty natural way, but it won't happen.
They've got to finish rehabilitating the Laurel character enough that the fans would buy into it and not rebel. At this point, the fans are so bought into the Olicity thing, it's going to take time to pull them back off that ledge. And the shippers out there are never going to give up on it. It's tough to rehabilitate that character and make it so people would buy the fact that Oliver's like, hey, I slept with your sister, my friend and had a baby while we were dating, and then was dating this woman for years. But let's hook up again just because S went down.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, while we're speaking about Laurel, though, she actually had a pretty decent episode. Lots of her being Laurel the lawyer, and she went hard on the stands, and unfortunately, she didn't see some of the curveballs that were coming with Dig on the stands, and had to fall back on her dad. But at that point, wasn't she just a wee bit conflicted? As in, I have a conflict of interest, and I probably shouldn't be the prosecutor on this trial anymore.
That's what I was thinking. As soon as Quentin Lance became the star witness for the prosecution, I was sitting there, I was going, I'm not sure you should really be the one that's up there as the district attorney. I mean, he point blank says, I did it because Damien Dark said he was going to kill you, and looks at her, and I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of a conflict here. She's obviously, I mean, it's obvious why she couldn't get the immunity deal too, because they're like, no, this is your father. He did real bad stuff. Whether it was for the right reason or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then she says, don't worry, Dad, I'll represent you at the IAB or the Internal Affairs Bureau hearing. I'm like, can you do that? Can the district attorney now? I don't know how that's going to work.
It depends on how the police unions and stuff work in Star City, I wager. I mean, they talked about the fact the union rep would be involved. I heard that much, at least, when they took his gun and badge away.
Yeah. But, and again, a lot of people online were saying that Laurel was fridged for this episode, and she was taken out of it. She was used ineffectively. With an ensemble cast like Arrow has right now, with lots of hero or powered, I should say, people, she had an important role to play as the assistant district attorney. In fact, I would say she was more critical to the progress of the story, especially the Damien Dark storyline, which you said was the B plot, the story of Quentin Lance. I was really happy how she was used in this. And she didn't break down. She didn't get ineffective. She went after her dad hard on the stand and made the hard call to put him up there. I think this is the opposite of fridging this character.
Yeah, I completely agree. They did what the smart thing was, and Oliver even says it's more important that you're here, that you're being a lawyer at this point in time. They have a big enough team they can live without one or two team members at a given time, but she needs to be in the courthouse so they can neutralize Damien Dark. That's all there is to it. So to me, it made sense. People are complaining about that one. I just don't really get that complaint.
No, not at all. Hey, let's touch on Captain Lance making the ultimate sacrifice, bringing his involvement with Hive out into the light, out of the dark with an H. Right call to make or wrong call, Chris?
I think it was the only call to make at that point. Damien Dark and his lawyer had set everything up so that nothing was sticking. The only card they had left to play was Quentin Lance, and the judge even touches on it. The fact that he confesses to it and puts himself in the line of fire goes to prove how true it probably is, because why else would you throw yourself up there and be like, hey, I'm a criminal too because of this? And if there's one thing we've learned about Quentin, his integrity matters a great deal to him. So he sacrificed that view that everyone has of him as this great police captain at this point to get Damien Dark taken care of. And we know there's going to be repercussions, and they want you to think he's in the grave now.
Well, hey, that's maybe a good segue. That's what I thought. As soon as we saw this, we saw him hand over his badge and his gun, make the ultimate sacrifice. There's probably no way that they can rehabilitate his career. Being a cop was everything. I don't know. I think he's in the grave, but you've got a different point of view on that one.
I think he is too. I mean, we even got an email in from one Big Papa, aka Steven Jonger, the owner of the Gonna Geek Network. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it's an email entitled Starling Tribune feedback regarding the grave. It's Lance, 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 it's Lance. Why? He's the key piece of evidence. So again, it's Lance, 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 it's Lance. And that repeats a few more times. But yeah, I tend to agree they're telegraphing it, but at the same time, since they're telegraphing it, it makes me think they're going to pull a swerve.
And you've gone down that road before. You say that the writers, if it seems too obvious, they'll swerve on it. I actually think at this point they don't have a choice. That we are 2 episodes away.
I'm leaning that way too. We're at the point now where they kind of have to stop playing games. And at this point, what do you do with Quentin's character now that he's, for lack of a better term, the disgraced former captain of the Star City Police Department.
Yep. That's his redemption arc. And maybe it's not even redemption arc. He's done everything he can. Let him move on. And we've talked about how large this ensemble cast has gotten. Do I hope it's Captain Lance? No, not at all. Yes, and Cajun Shaw in the chat had said he becomes a private detective, probably in Chicago, probably with magical powers.
Ooh, crossover with Constantine.
Yes, well, remember that he played Harry Dresden in Chicago, so the character has played a private eye. So, yeah, that would be awesome, but it's not going to happen.
No.
So, are you officially changing who's in the grave thought to Captain Lance? Is it official?
It's got to be Lance at this point. I don't know who else it is unless they just pull a complete swerve out of left field. Like you said, I think we're at the point where it's too late to keep playing these games rather and make us think it's going to be someone else. Cage and Sean thinks it's Samantha Clayton, aka Oliver's baby mama, but they did a pretty good job of writing both her and William out of things for now and hiding them away.
And my prior estimation was it was the calculator who was in the grave as part of his redemption arc as Felicity's dad. I am letting that one drop on the cutting room floor. It is Lance. I want to be proven wrong, but it's Lance.
Yeah, sorry, Jay. We think it's Lance.
Yeah.
Jay's going to be really mad.
So we had a tiny bit of Diggle on the stand. We had a tiny bit of Thea, but anything jump out for you for the rest of the cast on this one?
I felt so bad for Diggle up there as he just kind of gets blindsided by a bunch of stuff, but there's not a ton for Diggle or Thea really this week other than just supporting Oliver and Diggle having a conversation with Oliver like, keep going after the girl. And I'm like, don't tell him to do that. He's just going to get hurt more. Stop. Let him regroup. Let him get away.
And it's interesting because in the last episode, he did the opposite of what Diggle said. Diggle told him, come home to your son and your child and your wife every day and be there for them, be the dad. And at the end of the day, he's like, nah, I'm gonna listen to Vixen. So in this one, he's like, yeah, go after her, tell her how much. And he does, and it doesn't work out. So he's 0 for 2.
Yeah, poor Ollie.
Yeah, sad Oliver is sad.
He can't catch a break.
No. On the upside, Cupid got thrown back in prison, so she's still in the picture. They can bring her back when they need her. They
didn't kill her off, so that's good in my book. The question is, does she end up back at Argus?
I would like to think so. I would like to think that it was a mistake to take her out of Argus in the first place. If the first thing you do is go on a murderous spree of high society couples.
Yeah, I mean, she earned her freedom, but at the same time, it completely backfired. And if I'm Lila, I'm like, maybe I need to bring her back in here and keep her under control because the last thing Argus needs is yet another black eye in the public perception of things.
Agreed.
Another one because they're always constantly screwing up. Constantly.
Totally. That's about it for my notes. Anything else you want to add about this show?
That's all I really had for this week. I mean, we touched on it. It's setting up a bunch of stuff, and we didn't get much cool fight scenes, things like that. The problem is, it looked like next week's kind of another bit of a filler episode before we move on to some bigger things in the overarching plot.
Yeah, so next week, titled Beacon of Hope, Season 4, Episode 17. It's going to air on March 30th, 2016, wherein the bug-eyed bandit escapes from jail and turns up at Palmer Tech, threatening to kill everyone in the building unless she gets the biochip implanted in Felicity's spine. Directed by Michael Schultz, written by 2 veteran writers, Ben Solowitzky and Brian Ford Sullivan. So looking forward to that. The previews look great.
They really do. I wish I had an idea of how the preview of that doesn't really tell me much of how it fits into the grand scheme of things. And that's what I want to see is how this advances the overall plot. And hopefully it does. I don't want 2 weeks in a row of basically not moving forward on the whole Hive thing.
Agreed. I think we're going to get more Hive because I think at the end of the last episode, they actually showed Merlin in a flash forward talking to Damien Dark in prison. And I kept waiting for that scene this week. And I'm like, hang on, that was in the clip last week or at the end of the last episode. We didn't get it. So we know that's coming up next week then. It has to.
It has to. And it should be good because, hey, it's more Barrowman.
Yeah, and that's all good.
Exactly.
So, everyone, this is the part of the show where we run down the DC Easter eggs that were buried in this week's episode of Arrow. Again, we make reference to an article in comicbook.com that goes through things you might have missed. It's funny to see that they've actually dropped Easter eggs because a lot of these aren't Easter eggs. These are just shout outs. So, Chris, why don't you lead us off?
So the first one, probably the most obvious, Cupid's back again. And why is this a big deal? Because Andrew Kreisberg, an Arrow executive producer, is pretty much the one that came up with her for Green Arrow and Black Canary comics before. So it's nice to see her back. Plus, we love the actress that plays her.
It was fantastic. The second Easter egg was another callback to Markovia. We've seen Markovia mentioned in a ton of episodes. Recently, State versus Queen, and it was a nation in the comics run by Brian Markov, superhero named Geoforce, and his sister Tara, who was later killed by Deathstroke. So lots of ties to this show. We heard about it in the episode where they talked about the earthquake machine. So it's come out quite a few times in the show. So it was good to get another shout out.
It really was. There's also a shout out to another CW show. I don't know if it's quite on purpose, but Felicity makes a comment saying, taking Crazy Ex-Girlfriend to the next level. Well, there's a CW show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So it might not have been intentional, but at least it seems to be a shout out to another CW program.
And in fact, Chris, believe it or not, that's the first thing that crossed my mind when I saw it. I'm like, oh, cross-promoting other shows on the network. Really? Really? Is that where we're going?
It's like they're on the Gonna Geek network or something.
The next one was an actual shout out to Olicity. So when they were looking on one of the screens, even the people in Star City are calling them Olicity. So very nice.
Very nice indeed. Next thing, we have a reference to the Secret Six, possibly. It's a heck of a stretch, but the cell number next to where they're keeping Damien Dark is S-6. So some people are thinking it could be a reference to the DC book Secret Six. Be kind of cool if it was, because it was a pretty good book.
And the last one wasn't caught, but if you're a fan of the show, you know that whenever they throw out a street name or a hotel name, there's probably a reference to something in the DC universe. And I think I caught this when I was watching this episode, Hodgman and 25th. So, to the Googles, a quick look to see how Hodgman is connected to the DC universe. And the only one I found was actually the actor John Hodgman, who, if you remember, played the PC in the PC and Mac ads and was on The Daily Show. Turns out he's written a number of DC articles and comments, especially on the New 52, had a huge rant on the New 52 a few years ago. So there's a chance this could be a shout out to John Hodgman. Whether or not it is, I'm sure we'll never know, but I'd like to think it was.
I'm going to pretend like it is because it makes me chuckle inside.
That works for me. Hey, there was some news. Not a lot of news, a tiny bit of news, Chris.
That's true. Vixen Season 2, they've started recording. Mega Lynn, I always mess up her last name, so I'm just going to say EK, tweeted the script cover with a picture of her mic and pop filter. So they're getting started work on that as we speak.
I'm excited about that. And it's still odd. It's still not available up here in Canada, but with some great fortune, I travel back and forth to your fair nation from time to time. So was able to watch it from the comfort of my hotel room down stateside.
Well, I imagine you could always VPN it if you had to, because there are legitimate reasons to use VPNs, and that just might happen to be one additional perk to having to use a VPN for certain things.
Exactly. And, the only other real news item that we had this week was Felicity is running a fundraiser this week. So if you go over to Emily Bett Ricard's represent.com page, she is raising proceeds that will go to the American Autoimmune Related Diseases Association. And go buy her t-shirt. I've bought a few of the Represent t-shirts, Team ML mainly. But if you're looking to donate to a good cause, go check out Emily's fundraiser.
See, I saw her tweeting earlier this morning that she had a big announcement that was going to be coming up, but I just haven't been on the Twitter most of the day. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was wondering, what's her big announcement? And now I know.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun. I think it says it's bathroom therapy. Yeah, it's cute. There was one great interview that actually hit the airwaves over the last week, and Comic Book Resources interviewed Amy Germanek, who is Cupid. And it's a detailed interview. They talked about what her favorite part was, and she said she couldn't actually nail it down. It's all amazing. That Floyd Lawton's death is how she kind of got into the character's headspace and had a big impact on her. She loves the opportunity to go deeper into the character and see who Cupid is now and where she came from. And if you're a fan of the comics, you know that she actually plays a huge role in the classic Green Arrow Malcolm Merlyn storyline. And I'll leave it at that because that's a spoiler I'll let you discover for yourself.
Ooh, tease, tease, tease.
Exactly. Hey, Chris, you want to lead us off in some Green Arrow comic and toy news?
So Dark Archer issue number 6 is coming out yesterday when we record this, I guess, on March 23rd. It dropped. If you're not familiar, it's written by Carol and John Barrowman. The art's by Daniel Sampieri. And pretty much what's going on in this most recent issue, as Malcolm's confession continues, enter the League of Assassins. And I have to say, I have not read any of this yet. I'm going to probably try and pick up a collected trade of the Dark Archer books, but I'm super intrigued to see where they go with it, because Malcolm Merlyn is an intriguing character, and I want to see them fill in some of the gaps. Have you been reading it, Neil?
I've been picking this out as it comes up. This is one of the few subscriptions that I actually have on Comixology, so I get that sweet ping on my Gmail as I hear it's been delivered. And for 99 cents an issue, you can't go wrong with direct to digital. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's a fun ride. The only other comic and toy news we had this week is that if you are a fan of miniature and tabletop games, that the Batman DC Miniatures game got a few expansion packs this week, and one of them was the Arrow and Flash expansion pack. So it's the Batman DC miniature games from Night Models. They also make the Marvel miniatures game. And yeah, check it out. We've put the link in the show notes if you're a fan of tabletop games.
Very interesting. I might have to check it out. I play a little too much tabletop from time to time, rather.
That's awesome. We just doubled down on our Cards Against Humanity collection. We got the big black box.
Did you cut the secret card out of the lid?
Yes, we did, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that you did. And for those that aren't familiar, this is a family-friendly podcast. We won't talk about what the secret card is in the big black box for Cards Against Humanity.
But there's this thing called the YouTube where you might be able to find it.
Yes, and the Googles. Either one can provide you that information. We strongly encourage you to go look it up for yourself.
Hey, Chris, earlier on, you mentioned that we might be part of a podcast network.
That's true. Starling Tribune is part of 17 other shows on the Gonna Geek Network. You can find out more by heading over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com. There's all sorts of different geeky podcasts. There's forums, there's news articles. Basically, we're one of your sources for geeky information on the web. And why we're bringing that up is this week, there's a little indie movie coming out this week, and you guys might have heard of, called Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Anyone heard of this movie?
No, I had no idea. No, nothing.
Well, to prepare you for that, our friends over at Art House Legends are doing a Superman v Batman podcast. According to the episode description, they say, with these two comic book titans about to square off on the big screen this week, Art House Legends podcast is weighing in on the films that launched their movie franchises. In one corner, we have Superman from his 1978 film directed by Richard Donner. In the other, we have Batman, as directed by Tim Burton from 1989. Both films were Both films were well received by critics and fans, and both have survived recasting, remakes, and even bat nipples. But which one is the better superhero, and more importantly, which is the better film? Movie dude Eric, Kent, and John Lobster put their capes on to find out. So if you're going to be interested in going to go see Batman v Superman, go check out this most recent Art House Legends. Get a taste of what the original movies were like.
As we're recording this, I am less than 24 hours away from my pre-purchase ticket. So I've got time while walking the dog. I think I just may check that out.
There you go. I might be seeing it this weekend. More likely it'll end up being next weekend, and I'll make this weekend my Daredevil weekend because I've seen 0 episodes of Daredevil so far, and it's killing me.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
I know. I just haven't had time with C2E2 last weekend and getting caught up at work. Daredevil has been on the bottom of my list, sadly. So this weekend, Daredevil marathon.
Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, no.
Hey, before we sign out for this evening, I just want to thank all of our listeners and viewers, everyone who's downloaded the podcast, listen on Spreaker, Replay, YouTube, and thank you to our editor, Chris. I'd especially like to thank our live participants in our Blab chat tonight. If you would like to join the craziness, you can tell You can join us on blab.im on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and search for Starling Tribune on the Blab interface. Or head on over to geeks.live, where you can find all the live shows on the Gonna Geek Network. And don't forget, after our show, we open up the fourth seat on the Blab interface for our live listeners to hang out and share their thoughts. You can watch the next show on Gonna Geek Network live over at geeks.live. And it's going to be ATGN, all things good and nerdy, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, featuring Chris.
That's right, I'm there. Don't forget, if you got a chance, rate, review, and subscribe to the Starling Tribune. Giving us a 5-star review on iTunes is huge. It helps us with getting featured in the iTunes store and things like that. If you have a chance, also like us on Facebook and on the YouTube, and feel free to badger us on Twitter. We love getting interaction there. But don't forget, if you're wondering to yourself, where do I get their contact information? That's easy. Head on over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com. You'll find all of our contact information there. You'll find all the other great shows on the network. We'll definitely have something there to keep you entertained, aside from your Arrow fanaticism with the Starling Tribune. So if you want to share your thoughts on this episode, any past episodes, head over to our Facebook page, send in a tweet, or give us a call at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283.
Chris, my friend, it was fun hanging out and talking a little Arrow with you. I think that about wraps it up for another week. Any last words before we sign off and open up the Blab interface to our live listeners? At the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag bring back Cupid.
And I am at Neil Isn't Witty, signing off with hashtag more Cupid. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at GonnaGeek.com or check out our archive at StarlingTribune.com. Visit GonnaGeek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at Incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.
And we are out for this week. The extra seat is open if anyone wants to hop in, pass along any of their thoughts, feelings, concerns, or anything else they might have had for this week's Arrow. Please feel free to join us. We'll hang around and we'll chat for a little bit. That's what we like to do. Mad Hatter, Cage, and Sean, either of you want to jump in, feel free.
You don't know how hard it is to not spoil Daredevil for you right now.
I am glad that you're not. I have successfully avoided spoilers on the internet so far. All I know is that there is a stairwell scene that is almost as good as the hallway scene, if not better, for what people have been saying.
Well, you know what? If we let you go, yes, it's probably better. But no, Mad Hatter, I will not spoil it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Should we let Chris go and start his binge watch early?
Binge watch.
Yes, I think so. So, Chris, everyone, Mad Hatter, Cage and Sean, thanks for joining us on the live chat. Go watch yourself some Daredevil, my friend.
I'm headed off to do that. And thank you, everyone who joined us for the live Starling Tribune this week. Don't forget, we'll be back next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us over at geeks.live or just go to blab.im and search for the Starling Tribune.
Awesome. Night, everybody.
Night, guys.